Welcome to In the News for September 24th, 2021. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And I'm Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hi, Brett.
Good morning, Jeff, and happy iOS Quinceañera Day.
That's right.
Let's talk iOS 15. Man, you had several great posts. Of course, lots of people coming out. They're finally getting to use it. And it sounds like it's mostly positive, but nobody's really blown away by anything in particular.
Yeah, there's lots of cool little features. And so what I recommend that people do is find some of these posts, some of which I've listed to today, and there's more out there
great ones
of top 15 features, top 10 features, because there's a whole bunch of neat little things. There's a big one on the iPad, but I'm going to save that one for the end of today for my tip of the day. But there's a whole bunch of little bitty features that you're like, oh, well, look at that. Oh, well, look at that. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example of one of them. And I know that you noticed this one too. And it's the tiniest of features, but Apple changed the date picker. I think it was last year.
Yes.
And when I first, the date and time picker, at first it looked better, but for the past year that I've used it, it's a pain in the butt. I don't like it as much. And so they have gone back. They've gone back to the traditional spin the dial and you just spin it till you get to the time that you want. And just in the last week that I've been using it, I like it better. Now, that's not a great feature to talk about because it's not a new feature as much as return to an old feature, but it's an example of all these, tiny little things. There you go. The time picker. Yeah. It works better now. In fact, it's not exactly the old system. It's sort of a merger between the old system and the new system.
Right.
But that's one of a million little examples of things that are better.
I hadn't thought about this, Jeff, until one of the things that you linked to, of course, was I think you called it his tome of the iOS review. This is
so huge. Federico Viticci.
On MacStories.net, which of course is just fantastic. I mean, literally it's a book that he's written, but he does it online, which is just even cooler the way that he always does it. But man, if you want to, so I didn't even think about it until I was scrolling through this story that you posted. And you're right. It was weird because this is something that Apple doesn't normally talk about, something so small and seemingly insignificant like this. Mm-hmm. But it was a big deal for all of us that were like, wait a minute, that's different. And you had to type it in, and that's what he's showing here. I think you can do both today, right? Or maybe not.
That's why I say it's sort of a merger of the two. But if you found it easier just to spin for time, you can do that. But there's so many other little features too. I mean, photos alone. I linked to a post from Jason Snell where he sort of goes into it in detail. But there are so many things in the photos that have changed. For example, live text. Live text is so cool. I mean, if somebody was mentioning on a podcast I was listening to this morning that, how many times you're doing something, you need to type in like a serial number and you've got that serial number right in front of you on a piece of paper, but it's like 17 digits long and nobody wants to type that and remember where you are. But now you could just take your camera, take your iPhone without even using the camera feature. Like on the text input field, you can just point at the number that's on a piece of paper and it will read the number and copy it. Or if you've already taken a picture, you can just copy something from within the picture. And it's great. I mean, there's no longer this distinction between, is it a photo or is it an OCR scan? I mean, you can get text out of everything. I do have a gripe, which is that right now, what I want to be able to do is I want to open up the Photos app. And I know sometime in the past, I was at some store and I just want to find that store. Now, of course, I could find it from location, but if I was just going to do it from the title, Bob's Snowball Store or whatever it is, I just want to be able to open up Photos and search for the word snowball. Snowball was a sort of a New Orleans thing, like a snow cone. Right. And wherever a picture has those words in it, it shows up. You cannot do that currently from within the Photos app. Right. But it actually can be done if you're on your iPhone or your iPad home screen and you do a spotlight search where you sort of, pull down and the search bar, the thing that searches across your entire device, it will actually search the contents of Photos. So that seems backwards to me. It seems like the place they want to put it is in the Photos app. But again, there's room for improvement. The key is the feature is there in the first place. And so that's really cool. And there's so many other things.
For that live text, you can shoot it at something, like a sign that you're looking at, just like your example, Jeff. But I got to tell you, when I pulled it up, on my phone, I didn't have something in front of me, but I went into my photos and I was able to just pull up one of the photos that I'd taken of like maybe a document or of, a sign somewhere like that. And it was already recognized. I mean, this is almost like the evolution of OCR, something that we have lived with for years, decades. But first of all, I was like, okay, what do I do? Like, how do I get this to work? it was already there. And just like this little picture here, I could just tap my finger and select the text from the photo. That was a little of a mind-blowing experience for me.
It's
but
great.
Cool.
As lawyers nowadays, a lot of the stuff that lawyers do in research is online research. But there's still a time and place for books. And sometimes you'll be looking at a book of a statute and it's got the wording, and it's like, I need those 2 sentences that's right there in front of me. Just take a picture of it, and then it's on. In the old days, you could take a picture of it, convert it to a PDF, do an OCR scan. But now it's all one step. When you have the picture, you also have the text. So that's one feature that I could talk about for 30 minutes about how useful it is. And it's one of 100 new features or more than that. So I feel like iOS 15 is full of all these little gems. Yes, there's the marquee feature that you and I have talked about in the past, like quick notes. And I've already started using that one, but it's all these little bitty features, some of which are, as the title that you just scrolled past said, are game changers. Now, I do want to ask you about one feature. I see so many people talking about the new focus features, which is sort of the new version of Do Not Disturb.
I was going to ask you too.
Different modes. So maybe this is just me, but I do sometimes use Do Not Disturb. I mean, certainly if I'm in an environment where I can't be disturbed. But the thing is, I always have my sounds turned off on my phone anyway. I don't know that I'm going to, I don't know about focus yet. I haven't tried it and I don't know if it's for me. What do you think?
I'm the exact same way, Jeff. Honestly, I use the Do Not Disturb quite often. Like you said, like when we're recording a presentation or we're doing this, I will do Not Disturb on my iPhone or frankly on my Mac if we're using that. In my mind, it's simple because it's like, okay, I'm going to turn off all of my notifications so that, if somebody texts me or a Twitter reply comes in, like it doesn't show up on there. That's really what I purposely use it for. People have been talking about this focus for like it's going to be amazing and it's great. And I read them all. I understand, like he says right here, it's supposed to be Do Not Disturb mode on steroids. So you can like customize or tweak the way, some things will come through and other things won't. I kind of like that. I think of it almost like a night mode, like overnight. Sure. Like my phone won't disturb me, or they call it bedtime mode, I think, right? But like if my wife calls me, if she's not there, my wife calls me, one of my kids, that will come through, right? That will automatically ring through. I kind of think of it that way, I guess, but I haven't even started on this. Everybody's been very excited about this, Jeff, but I don't get it yet. Maybe we will.
I'm going to set aside some time at some point in the future just to really give it the old college try for a week and see what I think about it. But for now, I think the thing for me is I have already tamed so few things are even allowed to notify me. But then when they do notify me, I just get tapped on my watch, which doesn't really interrupt me. If I'm on a phone call or if I'm in a meeting and something taps on my watch and I'm busy, I just ignore the watch. But if I want to see what it is, I look at my watch and I see what it is. So I feel like I already have a pretty good notification system. But again, kudos to Apple. And so many people have said that they have really enjoyed it, that I know it's a great feature for some people, and maybe it will be for me. I'll say I just haven't gotten there yet.
I mean, the idea is that you can set it up specifically for things you can see on the screen here. While you're at work, you want this, only these notifications. While you are working out, you only want these notifications. While you're cooking. And I get it. I mean, the idea sounds really cool. Like you said, I think we just got to have some hands-on maybe a little bit and kind of figure that out on there. But I was going to ask you the same question because I see so many people talking about it. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I missing? And maybe nothing yet, but hopefully we'll understand it here a little bit in the by and by. On there. Another thing quickly I was going to ask you about, because you linked to a couple of these, some good articles about Safari extensions. So Safari, of course, is the web browser on the Mac and the iPad and the iPhone, the default browser, I should say. Apple's been very kind to let us change the default browser if you wanted to. But something that they had not allowed in iPhone and iPad were extensions, which if you use Google Chrome as your browser on a Windows or a Mac computer, that you can install little extensions that will do things, fancy little things built into the browser, which is really cool. But now Apple is allowing this. And I think for the same thing, you said almost the same thing, Jeff. I was most excited about the 1Password Safari extension, but you had some great links here for some other extensions on there. I just started playing with the 1Password. I already liked the way it integrated with the browser, but now it's even better. It's pretty amazing. I'm excited to see where this goes. I think we're at the very beginning of what this could possibly be.
Yeah, I mean, it's a step towards the iPad and even the iPhone being more of a real computer. Just to take 1Password, for example, I love 1Password. I use it all the time, but there were many times for certain websites that I would have to go to open the 1Password app, copy my ID,
same thing,
paste it, and then go back to 1Password, copy the password, go back to Safari, paste it. Now, 1Password made that easier because when it saw you doing that, when it saw you copying the user ID, when you went back to the app the second time, it automatically copied the password for you, figuring that's what you were trying to do. But now it's integrated, much like it would be on a computer, that it's, right there on the boxes where you would type stuff in, 1Password works from within there. And again, it's if you've used a password manager on a computer, it's much more integrated. You can do almost all the same features. So it's faster, it's more efficient. And that's just one thing. I mean, that's just the 1Password. So many other extensions, whether you want to have things that, block cookies, or I linked to one yesterday that blocks this morning that it blocks those things when you go to a website and you get that big banner at the bottom that says, do you consent to such and such, which is, just getting in the way. It says
cookies, all the cookies.
You put in your default and the extension, always say yes or always say no. And then you should never be able to see that again. Things like that just make the browsing experience, it's just what's the limit of the creativity of engineers of how can they make the browsing experience better. And although this has been around for a while on the desktop, there may be different things that make a browsing experience better on a small device like an iPhone or an iPad. So, but again, Safari extensions, I mean, this is another example of how expansive iOS 15 is. Safari extensions is only one of the changes. I mean, Safari is one of the probably the biggest changed apps that we have.
Yeah.
So many things have changed in Safari. It's got, look, so there's just a lot that's different in here. The weather app is brand new. They finally integrated dark sky. I mean, there are so many changes in iOS 15. I feel like I'm just starting to, in fact, I've started making a list of like things that I really like. And when I get to the point where I sort of feel like I have sort of a definitive list, I'll probably post about it on iPhone JD.
Good.
But for now, excellent. I'm still finding things, and it's just a delight.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I like about it, there's always like sort of the marquee changes or features. Live text we've been talking about. Apparently a lot of people like the focus aspect on there. Some, a few things that we know is coming down and Apple talks about, but what I always get excited about is all these little tiny things, exactly what we're talking about. The weather app, immediately I saw how much better that looked, especially as a widget on my iPad. But I just love having access to that. I mean, I like Carrot Weather. We've talked about that before and some of the other apps that are available out there, but it's just a lot of these tiny, additions, which I think are great. And then one last story that you linked to, Jeff, I thought was good is Apple actually did talk about some features for iOS 15 that we're gonna have to wait just a little bit of time for. Right? This was a good article, I thought, on Mac Rumors.
Yeah, and I say bravo. The last thing I want is a half-baked feature that doesn't quite work yet. It's great that Apple shares their ambitions in June of what's going to be coming in iOS 15. But if something's not ready on day one, don't reveal it. So there's things like the share play thing that different people can watch something at the same time, and some other little feature like universal control where you can control different devices. There's some features that are coming down the road, and I think that is totally fine. Let it come in 15.1, 15.2. When it's ready, it's ready. We have enough new things to play with now. But yeah, if you're curious about some of those things that you remember hearing about this summer, this article does a good job of explaining why they're not quite here yet, but presumably will be soon.
Totally agree with you. I mean, and Apple made a really big deal. This was back in the summer, right? When they were talking about iOS 15, Share Play, they were like showing that off a lot. And we all remember the universal control where, was it Craig Federici, was like lifting up or he was like showing how you could go back and forth very easily.
In a computer and a Mac and an iPad. Yeah.
Not there yet. Obviously they're working on it, but I don't even know that some of these even showed up in the beta versions. I was running iPadOS 15 on my beta on my iPad, and some of this wasn't even showing up there. So you really know that it's not quite ready, but I agree. I'm glad that Apple hasn't released it until it's really, really ready, which is good. All right. So from iOS 15, which by the way was released this past Monday, right? The 20th, September 20th on Monday. Obviously, you and I have already upgraded. I've done my iPad, my iPhone. I've even upgraded Safari on my Mac. I've done my Watch OS as well.
My Apple TV. Yeah, my HomePod,
all the Apple things, all the things.
Updated.
But I think we talked about this just a little bit last week. I still tell people, folks like Jeff and I, we're more than happy to upgrade because we've been studying this and we're familiar with it. But there's a lot of folks out there I know that sometimes are a little hesitant for one reason or another, and that's okay. Even if you give it another week or so. I typically don't like to wait more than 2 or 3 weeks because there are some significant security patches and updates in here that, again, I know how many people have been pounding on iOS 15 for months now. And it's like if there were some big major issues, it would be covered up. But Apple's really good about releasing some significant upgrades or, even some incremental ones if anything needs to be fixed. So anyway, that was my public service announcement for the day. You can still wait a while. I wouldn't wait that long, quite that long though.
The water's fine. Come on in.
Okay. So let's talk about the other big story. You have your case for the iPhone 13.
I got my iPhone 13 case. Yeah, it came on Wednesday. So which is just so distressing to sit there and look at a case.
It's coming
I don't have it with me right now, but you look at the case and you're like, oh, I wish I had something to go inside of this case. But as I noted in the post that the cutout for the cameras is noticeably bigger. Not only is it a bigger cutout, but it's actually a little bit deeper. So I'm going to be curious. It's clearly, you can see it from the pictures on Apple's website. It's a thicker camera, and again, it's still tiny camera because it's a camera on a phone, for goodness sakes. This is not a Nikon DSLR camera, but Apple continues to make it better. And from all the initial reviews, I think that is one of the marquee features is the better camera. The other one is the battery. But it's funny to say that because, Apple has been consistently improving and seriously improving the camera on the iPhone every year. And so at some point you would think that the laws of physics would say there's only so much you can do with a camera that fits in something the size of a pancake, but they continue to make it better. And everything from just regular users have talked about, you can get cool macro photography shots that you just could not get before. And the telephoto lens. Last night I was watching my daughter started playing volleyball this season. And so I was, in the stands watching her at the school gym, and I wanted to sort of get a close-up shot. And I did the 2X telephoto, which is what my iPhone 12 can do. And it just wasn't quite close enough. And I was like, oh, I wish I had that. Yeah, you could do digital zoom, but digital zoom quality is not very good. If I could have just gotten that 3X zoom. So for her next game, I'll be able to do that. But all of these cool features. But then you go to the other extreme. And I don't know if you saw the article that I linked to from Austin Mann with his photos. Oh my goodness.
Fantastic.
He does these posts every year. And he is, this is a true professional photographer who traveled to a safari in Africa. And so he's taking these incredible pictures of lions and zebras hanging from a helicopter. So I will not be in the situation to take these pictures at any time. But when you see what a professional can do between the video and the pictures,
look at that.
It's just, it's like, wow, this can all happen with this device. And he talks, for example, about, I just spoke about the telephoto lens. And again, that's only on the Pro. That's not on the iPhone 13. But the telephoto lens on the Pro, my simplistic mind tells me it gets you closer to the action, right? But what he points out is that another thing it does is it gives you that bokeh effect where something can be really focused in the foreground and more out of focus in the background. Now, of course, Apple can fake that very, very well using the portrait mode feature, but it happens in a real way when you use a telephoto lens. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that is true. Telephoto lens is not just for making things closer. It's also for adjusting the depth of field. And so he just has this series of incredible pictures that I found completely inspiring. So, and it just shows you that it's a real improvement to the cameras this year. Whether you're using the regular iPhone 13 or the Pro, it's much better, and that's going to be a lot of fun, especially as we're starting to get out in the world more. The other thing is, I'm so happy
you linked to this, by the way. You always find like some really good stuff. These pictures and the little video.
This one, the one that you're showing right now is just, incredible. I feel like I'm living inside of National Geographic. The idea that he's using the same camera that I'm going to have on my phone. So that's one thing. But the other one, how many weeks ago was it, Brett, that we were talking about Apple came out with their new MagSafe battery. And we were talking about what's nice about it is it gives you that little, I don't own one yet, but the idea is it gives you that little boost when you need it at the end of the day. And it's so simple that you can just slap it on the back of the camera. But what's even better than slapping it on the back of the camera? It's just having more battery life to begin with.
I know.
So every new iPhone 13 has at least an hour and a half. and it could be 2.5 hours on some of the models. And that's just sort of an average. I mean, if you look on the Apple webpage, one of the things that they measure is how long you could watch a video. So like you're taking a long flight on a plane and you're just watching a video. The increase in time between just one generation, just last year's iPhone and this year's iPhone, it's like 10 hours. I mean, it's crazy increase in battery life. So this is the sort of thing that if you ask a normal person on the street, what's like one thing that would make your iPhone better? An answer you will often hear is, well, longer battery life. And so Apple has, between that and the camera, those two features, the initial reviews have been fantastic, and I'm very excited.
I've heard some people talk about the fact that, you talk about the law of physics, as it were, right? There's only so much battery that you can either physically fit in there, or somebody was saying how you can only fit so much battery before it starts to interfere with like the antennas or some other pieces and parts inside the phone. But the reason that it's even improved more, I think because it is a slightly larger battery, but because Apple it's their own hardware and their software, and most importantly on the hardware side, it's the chip, right? It's the processor inside, that they're able to tweak that. And one person that I heard was describing it as they can use artificial intelligence to sort of predict what you're going to do. And so by knowing that, they can then sort of tweak the way that the battery is going to be used. Obviously, this is beyond my full comprehension, but it was just amazing to me. That's one of the things we've always talked about Apple products, because they own both the hardware and the software, right? And the fact that they can tweak that, it's just amazing that they are continuing to get more and more power out of that. But to your point, that's what most people really, really care about, right? The fact that the camera continues to get better, that's just sort of the icing on the cake. But number one on everybody, like on the typical regular man's list, it's more battery, right? They want it to last longer before they have to go and have to charge it up. Yeah, that's usually what everybody is always asking about all the time.
One of the things I thought was interesting, and I think I linked to it today, was a post by Jason Snell on 6 Colors, where he compares the iPhone 13 to there you go. You got it. Gosh, Brad, you have everything right at your fingertips.
I'm ready. You have good links.
He had compared what do you get if you're coming from an iPhone 10?
Yeah,
what do you get if you're coming from an iPhone SE? And it's great because most people are not going to be upgrading from last year's iPhone. Most people will, wait a couple of years. But when you do that, then you get like these huge leaps. So this is a fun, if you're thinking about, that might be time and it's been a few years for you, take a look at that post, because he's got a great, the changes years to year, sometimes people say they're incremental. And I think that's a bad word to use to a certain degree, because it seems a little derogatory, because incremental changes are still good. But when you look at it over time, they're real changes. So I just can't wait to start playing with my iPhone 13
Speaking
Pro.
of which, this was the Brian Chen from the New York Times. That was exactly what he said in his post.
Okay, I got some problems.
13, the most incremental upgrade ever. I agree with you. I've got some problems with it as well. But somebody was saying, I was listening. In fact, it was Rene Ritchie on another podcast. He's a YouTuber and obviously writes for imore.com as well. But I love the way he described it. He's like, if you have a bakery, you have to make fresh French bread every day, right? Not because everybody's going to come in and get a new, fresh loaf of bread every single day, but you have to make fresh loaves of bread every day, because some people are going to come in every day or every other day. Every day, somebody's coming in to get a fresh loaf of bread. And in some of those cases, that's really what Apple has to continue to do, right? We think about why should they upgrade, every single year? Well, there are going to be people, exactly what you say here within Jason Snell's article, that are upgrading from an iPhone 7 or an 8 or a 10. And I love how he goes through this article. This is a great article that you link to, because he explains exactly what you're going to be getting, what you may not be getting. For those of us that were using the iPhone 12, I know there are folks on the 12 that are like, yeah, I don't know if it's enough to really push me over to the top.
That's fine.
And I've done that. I've skipped some, because it's just every year, maybe you don't have to necessarily upgrade. But there are going to be a lot of people. I mean, there are millions of people that are still using an iPhone 7, right? And an 8. I mean, there are millions and millions and millions of people out still using those older phones. And so, you can't blame, obviously, Apple for doing this. And if they make even just incremental changes, that's still a good thing. They're still going to do a very good job on that, because they're going to be taking care of those people that need to come in and get that fresh loaf of French bread that morning.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to go too much into it, but that New York Times article by Brian X. Chen, he's a tech enthusiast. Years and years ago, he wrote for Macworld. He's written for Wired. He's a great writer, and in general, he appreciates technology. But for some reason, something got, he had a bug when he wrote his review this year, and it was sort of a bah humbug consumerism, who needs a schmickin' new iPhone, we're fine with what we have, sort of thing. And it misses the point that Apple, you want companies, any company, whenever they're going to release something new, to have improvements. And every year it's not going to be, it's a completely new iPhone, but over time when people upgrade. So I really think he was, he missed the point in his review. And that's part of the reason I purposefully did not link to it on iPhone JD.
Okay. Very good. Well, then let's go to another piece of hardware that we have been talking about a little bit. We talked about the iPhone 13, and you are getting one, hopefully today. So next week, you'll be able to show your brand new iPhone 13 off. And that's his 13 Pro, I think, right?
Yep.
But I'm going to guess you haven't yet purchased the brand new iPad mini. Am I correct, sir?
Yeah. And I don't know if I will, and I don't know that I have anything new to say that you and I didn't talk about last week. But the difference is now some of the initial reviewers have seen it, and they say it's great because it's just so powerful. It can do so much. And having something that's small enough, as people have described it, they have said that when you have something that's small enough that you can hold it in your hand, it really just changes the way that you use the device. And that makes sense to me, because I think about like my iPad Pro, which is 12.9 inches, is huge, and my iPhone. At its core, they both run apps. They both run a version of iOS. I mean, they have a lot of similarities, but in my mind, they are completely different devices. I'm using my iPad to be reading briefs and to annotate things and to work on documents, whereas my iPhone is for my messages and my emails and stuff like that. And so it reminds you that just a different screen size can have a dramatic effect on what the device is used for. And the initial reviewers have said that the iPad mini, it's a smaller version of the bigger iPad. It's sort of the best analogy is it's really like the iPad Air, a smaller version of the iPad Air. But they say when you have something that you can hold with one hand, you can type on it using your thumbs so much more easily, like a phone. It's just easy to carry around. I also heard people say that they find that they would use it in the portrait mode. So like where it's tall, a lot more than traditional iPads, that people tend to hold them in the landscape mode when they're horizontal, just because it's very comfortable to use it that way. And that way you have lots up and down. So it was interesting to me to read the reviewers say that, yes, it's smaller, but that actually means something. It means that you use the device in a different way that's really nice. And it's gotten a lot of love. So for people that have a place in their life for a small iPad, this is a great year to get it because it's so powerful, and it's going to be a great device for many, many, many years to come.
On MacStories, you link to Federico's little review. I guess it's a review, but I think I looked at it more of like, it's really neat, because one of the sentences he said in here that he found it has been the missing piece to his iPad workflow. I love that little thing, because you and I talked about this last time as well. This is not going to replace my iPad Pro, and it certainly isn't going to replace my iPhone. But again, I do think there could be a space in the middle. Maybe not for everybody. And I know some people hear us saying that and they're like, what are you, crazy? Like that's, purchasing another iPad just to, fit that small little sliver of space between those two devices. But Federico, I think, makes an excellent point here. Jason Snell, you were talking about, he's talking about using it as a way to look at documents and do some typing. It's a good way to capture some information. I think I mentioned last time I loved using it as sort of like my Kindle almost. It's a lot more expensive than what a Kindle could actually be, a Kindle device, but it can do so much more than a Kindle as well. Plus, it synchronizes with everything with my Quick Notes, and which, oh boy, we got to talk about Quick Notes another time, another day. But man, I am loving the Quick Notes on the iPad on there. So anyway, good links on the iPad mini. I know we talked probably all about it last time, but at least wanted to just say that now the reviews are coming in, and it's good that we're starting to see what people are talking about on there. So a couple of bonuses, a couple of links that you had on here as well. This was interesting. Because speaking of the iPad mini, they do have a USB-C connector, correct? Whereas the iPhones, all the iPhones still have a Lightning connector. The iPad regular and the iPad Air, I think, still have a Lightning connector. This is getting too confusing. And apparently I'm not the only one thinking about this. The European Union, no less, is going to try to force every device to have a USB-C.
I'm shaking my head at this. I'm shaking my head. I mean, when devices add USB-C, am I excited? Yes. Do I want a governmental entity mandating that USB-C is the holy grail and this is what everybody has to use? Absolutely not.
No.
I mean, as I pointed out today, if somebody had mandated a standard 5 years ago, it would have been USB 3, and then we wouldn't have the advantages of USB-C.
John Gruber.
And if you mandate USB-C today, what happens when in free market we would have had an even better standard in a couple of years? This makes no sense to say we've now reached the best that we will ever reach. And so this is what everybody shall use. No. And I do understand where they're coming from. It is true.
Exactly.
And it is wasteful that you have to have two different chargers for two different ports. I understand that. That's why I'm in favor of moving towards standards. And if more Apple devices have USB-C, I'm in favor of that. But you know what? If USB-C 2 comes out that is noticeably better, I don't want us to be stymied from having that advancement. This is silly.
I will say for one thing, pro or con, or looking at it from different ways, I wish everything was USB-C. And I think you're on the same page, right? I would love even the iPhones. I think I'm ready to go all in because
I'd be fine with that.
A Mac. I've got a Mac that is all USB-C. The iPad Pros are USB-C. Like everything is obviously going that way. And I don't know why the iPhones quite haven't got there. I think I kind of have some ideas we don't need to go into right now, but it would be great. But to me, that's left up to the quote free market, if you will, in the way that we're going to design. Like Apple has done some risk before. They went to the Lightning before, and everybody was just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're doing that, because it was so much better than having a headphone jack and the other 30-pin connector. But we lived through that, and we're better off for that. And it's just going to continue to evolve. And I think this is just sort of it is a necessary evil, maybe is a good way to say it. It's the way it's going to be, and we're going to keep improving. So anyway,
I know I'm piling on, but I mean, just to say one more thing, and this was linked somewhere. This wasn't an original thought, but it's a little bit of a waste that we have to get new cases when you get a new iPhone.
Yes,
but does that mean that I want some government telling me there shall be only one size for smartphones and they shall all use the same cases? No, because years ago, I remember when Samsung was coming out, and I don't even use Samsung phones, but they were coming out with these crazy big phones and crazy small phones. And you know what? Most of them did not work, but some of them did. And the market decided, hey, some people were interested in bigger phones. And you know what? iPhones are bigger now because you had so I would talk about the free market forever.
Yeah.
I'm
not
that much of a free market person, but that was
John Gruber that said that. You're right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He made a good point. Like, why not mandate all phones? Okay, good. I wanted to point it out. You had a couple of good links in there. I'm guessing nothing's really going to come out of this, but it's just interesting that
fingers crossed,
people are talking about this. One other quick little bonus, mostly for folks that are in sort of the legal space, just real quick. You and I, Jeff, are both big fans of Ian and Tara at Lit Software. The Lit Suite, you can save $100. That goes away on October the 1st. So you had a good link in there, like, hey, get it while you can.
Take advantage of this discount because it lasts forever. Like if you get the $100 discount this year, next year when you renew, you'll get another discount. The year after that, you'll still get the discount. So in a couple of years, you're saving hundreds of dollars. So it's something you're probably going to want to have if you're a litigator. You've probably bought one of the apps in the past. And so this is the time to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll link to you did back in February of this year, you did a great review of the Lit Suite. And in fact, I'll also do a quick little link to, I had Tara Cheever on my podcast.
Oh, that was a great one.
Very long interview, but it was just great because I wanted to give her a chance to talk about it. A lot of people were upset that they went to a subscription. Okay, we don't need to go into all that too much on there, but just if you're thinking about it or if you're using it, definitely jump on while you can. In the know, couple of tips. I feel like we should just do some iOS 15 tips just because that's what everybody is talking about there.
I agree. What's one of your favorites?
You alluded to this already that one of the biggest changes in iOS 15 is the Safari browser for a multitude. We talked about extensions. We talked about one of the biggest things, which, oh my goodness, Jeff, I don't know why everybody is just going off the rocker on this, but Apple did make a significant change in this, right? We are all familiar with any web browser, computer, phone, whatever, that the URL box, right? The box where we type in, iPhoneJD.com. We're all familiar with that box being at the very top of the screen. I get it.
Where it has been since the very first web browser in the mid
1993, right? Right. It's been there since Netscape, since everything. I get it. I do. And I will embrace change, but I do like things to stay where they are. You had a great post, by the way, linked to the video, which I watched as well. From Joanna Stern of Wall Street. And you got to watch this. That's a great video that you linked to. She's in the same way. She I think her comment was, I don't like the way it changes. Because what happened with iOS 15 in Safari, Apple put what they call now the tab bar or the URL box at the bottom of the screen. And everybody is just freaking out. I get why. I understand that people want to keep it at the top. But Jeff, I got to tell you, in a week that I've been using it, I'm loving it. I am I weird? I don't know what I love the fact that it is more accessible, I guess, to my thumb. Maybe that's a better way because here's a few of the tips that I'm using on this. First of all, and here's I just showed at the very bottom, and this is the tab bar. First of all, I usually have a lot of tabs open on my iPhone Safari, right?
Me too.
And I used to I have to tap that little the tab button, which is still there. And then I would have to go and find which of the tabs and which window was open. But now I can just take my thumb and swipe left or right, and it will cycle through the open tabs that I have. I love that.
Great tip. Great tip.
That's an excellent way to go through all the tabs that I have. The second thing, I've just started playing with this now, is I can actually just with my thumb, just simply swipe up on the tab bar, not swipe up from the very bottom of the screen, right? Because that will go back to your home screen. But if you just put your thumb on the tab bar and swipe up from there, it will literally give you a holistic picture or a tiled version of all of the tabs that you currently have open. I have been using that. It's already second nature to me. I love being able to do that because then I can see all the square tiles of the tabs that I have open. And then I can tap X to close them, or I can swipe to the left and the window will be closed on that. A couple of other things quickly. If you tap
before you move on from that, it makes me wonder why Apple also put an icon at the bottom right that you can tap the icon to bring up your different tabs. And that's fine. I mean, that's so there's three ways to do it. But
there is,
since swiping with your thumb works so darn well, and since swiping up from the bottom works well too, when you're in that mode, I don't think you need to have that extra button there. It's fine. It doesn't get in the way, so that's fine. But the two methods that you just mentioned are so much faster. I like them so much
better. Absolutely. By the way, I loved your tip from last week when you were talking about like tap and hold on the reader mode, or maybe that was a couple weeks ago. Loved that. And to me, this is even just getting better on some of that. But you're right. Maybe Apple kept that little tab button there just because that's what we're all used to. But I don't even use it anymore. Honestly, I swipe up just on that little tab. A couple of other quick ones that I'm just finding out on this. If you tap and hold on the tab bar, you can quickly copy the URL, which is nice because I do this a lot. If I find an article that I want to read, I will copy the URL into a different, a note or something, or a document or something like that. Or something else we really didn't talk about, I can add the tab to a tab group. Doesn't sound like it's that big of a deal, but it's a pretty big change. It's something new that Apple put in here to add tab groups. I haven't gotten used to doing that yet, but I can certainly see myself doing it. The other thing,
that's a great tip.
Yeah, it is. I can tap and drag my thumb on that tab bar. And what happens is that it becomes a floating URL. And what I love about it is I tap and drag on the tab. It's a floating little URL. And then I can use my other hand to swipe up, go to a different app, like an email message, and then I can drop that little URL into the email message. I'm not describing it the best way.
No, that's a power feature. You can do the same thing with photos too.
Right.
You can take a photo from one app, you can drag it into another app. Something you could do this on the iPad for a while, but now you can do it on the iPhone too.
Right. So anyway, those are my quick little tips. I'm loving the tab bar. It took about a day for me to be like, well, that's different. But now it's different good. I love it. I am, everything that you hear, in fact, the video that you linked to from Joanna Stern, the immediate thing that everybody talks about is how to switch the URL box back to the top. And I get it. And everybody wants to be able to do that. And it's easy to do that, by the way. You can actually tap and hold on the reader mode, and it'll say, put the tab bar or the URL box at the top. I like that. And if you just can't get used to it, you can still put it back the way you're familiar with it. But I got to tell you, give the tab bar a chance, because unlike everybody else, I guess, that thinks it is horrible, I am starting to love it. So that's my tip on iOS 15, the Safari tab bar. It's a good thing. That's a great tip. A very good thing.
I'll tell you, so far, I'm in between. I love the switching between tabs with your thumb. It's fantastic. And I'm using it right now because I want to see if I get used to it. Because if I feel like if I get used to it, I am going to prefer it. Having said that, there are still times that I pick up my phone and I want to type to put in a URL, and my finger instinctively taps the top of my phone instead of the bottom of the phone. So I'm still getting used to it, but I think I might prefer it. I'm still trying to decide. So
get back to me on that. We'll see.
Yeah.
Because I just tell people, give it a chance. Everybody wants to change it, and I understand that, but give it a chance.
Yeah. My tip of the week is widgets on the iPad. Not a new feature in that we had widgets on the iPhone last year, but widgets on the iPad that you can put them anywhere you want on your home screen the first second. It is mind blowing. I mean, it has totally changed the way that I use my iPad. When I'm working at my desk, my computer is always in front of me and my iPad is always right there next to me. And the home screen of my iPad, I now have 0 icons on my home screen. Now, why do I do that? The reason that I do that is, first of all, you don't really need it, because at your at the very bottom of the screen where you've got your dock, you can now have an extra 2 icons in there. So for an iPad Pro 12.9 inch like I have, I can fit 17 icons at the bottom of the screen. If there's an app that's not in the top 17, I'm not using it all the time, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
But the main part of my screen is nothing but widgets, and it's like it's this dashboard. My iPad is a completely different device when it has nothing but widgets on it, because I have a widget for weather. I've got a widget for things, which is my to-do app, which means every time I glance at my iPad, I instantly see a list of, the one that I have, it's the large widget. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It must be like my top 15 tasks that I have to do are all right there. So I don't even have to open up. Why this matters is I don't have to open the app to see what's on my to-do list. Every time I glance at my iPad, I'm constantly being reminded, here's the things in order of most important or most urgent. And that's useful. Every time I glance at my iPad, I can see the weather. I can see at the top right, I've got a big square of a picture that the iPhone changes all the time through the Photos app, which just makes me happy because every time I glance, I see a new picture. And again, you could do all this with the iPhone before, but because my iPad is it's a big screen, so it can hold so many more widgets, it just within a week, less than a week, it has completely changed how useful my iPad is. So what I'm doing right now is I'm still playing with it. I'm figuring out which widgets I like the best, what size makes the most sense. They have this brand new size of extra large that's basically 2/3 of your screen. I haven't decided if I want to use that yet, but when I get to when I get to the point where I have figured out what I think, of course, it's always subject to change, but when I get sort of comfortable, I'll probably post something on iPhone JT of, here's the widgets I'm using, here's why I'm using it. But my tip of the week is, just try out getting rid of all of the icons on your iPad home screen and replacing it all with widgets to show you information that you find useful, because that way you don't even have to open up the app. You can just glance and see stuff. It surprises me how much of a change this has been for me. I really love it.
I'm so glad you mentioned this, because as I said, I've been running the beta iPadOS 15 on my iPads. And I got to tell you, from the time that I started doing this and even till this week, I'm squeezing out all of the apps. I'm getting there, Jeff. In other words, just exactly what you said. The more I find the functionality of these widgets, and this is a good story I found about the XL widgets, the really big size.
They're really, really big.
But it's just so great that I can just tap on my iPad, and just like you said, at a glance, I see everything without having to go into an app. And until you start playing with this and sit down and like really take the time to, I have to like go in and add a widget, and then I look at the different sizes, right? And then I have to decide where I want that to be placed, and you can place it now. The only thing I would say, sometimes it gets a little wonky because the apps try to rearrange themselves more than I really want them
Placing
to.
the widgets on there will drive you crazy. It's not a good system. Every time you decide that you want to rearrange the widgets, whatever way is the least intuitive, that's what it does. It's very annoying. So
that gets me. Okay, good. So you're there too. I don't
understand. Somewhere, I'm hoping that somebody writes a definitive post of, here's the logic system it's using, and here's how you think the way that it thinks, because I do not think the way that it thinks right now. But once you get them in place, that's what I like. So
I agreed. Okay, excellent tip. And like I said, it is definitely, because if you don't know about it or don't add them or don't take the time to add them in, you'll never know, right? Because when you upgrade it, everything just stays the same the way that you had it, which is all your apps on the screen. But I agree. I've been squeezing more and more of the individual apps out, and my iPad screen is almost like, it's like my life dashboard now. Like you said, I got pictures, I got the weather, I got everything. Anyways, very good tip, and I appreciate you sharing on that. Good. Wow. Okay. Well, this might be another long one.
So much to talk about. We got
so
new
much
iOSs,
to talk about.
We got new iPhones. We got new iPads. It's all new. There's so much to talk about.
Well, all that means is we'll have more to talk about next week. So we'll see you next week, Jeff.
Bye, Brett. See you all, everybody. Bye.